ReturnOfKings.com is an indefinitely on hiatus website that once was at the center of the manosphere. You can take your pick from articles titled 3 Downsides of Dating Traditional Women. Develop your discipline with this simple habit, the habit being the Stoic-like philosophy of cold showers and its ability to build courage. To my all-time favorite, Are You Too Agreeable? And this article makes the following and insightful declarations. When you're too agreeable of a person, you subject yourself to being a communal walking doormat. Being a strong, no-nonsense alpha male will lend you better advancement opportunities and higher compensation. Conversely, the combative, unfriendly, power-hungry woman achieves only a negligible increase in pay and effectively makes herself the most despised person in the workplace. The disagreeable man is less inclined to waste time procuring for the approval and affections of peripheral figures who do little to benefit his purpose. This article is a clear example of the modern men's self-help industrial complex, which encompasses a plethora of blogs, websites, forums, and videos, podcasts dedicated to men's issues and addressing them. According to the most extreme tenets of this men's-focused industrial complex, the modern world has revealed itself to be intentionally gynocentric. Modern men are not only subservient to modern women, but in absolute terms have it the toughest.
But here's the problem that I have. Probably the number one problem I have with women is we want X, and by God, we're equal to you. Fine, I'm going to treat you as an equal. You know what men do? They tell you the goddamn truth and what they want right up front.
That's right.
I want you. You want me to be kind and civil and show up on time and be a doormat. All right, I will. Well, why are you sleeping again with T. Rash? Something happened. And so that's,
he's a Pisces.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You told guys X, and I'd say at least coming up on 3 generations of men pissed away their youth delivering X when they should have been hitting the gym or working hard or whatever else, and then they didn't reward the guy and like, oh, I don't know. And even, honestly, I don't think women know what they want.
On the one hand, I think that the manosphere is a cause of its own explanations and declarations. What I mean by this is, yes, modern men do have it tough, which is not to say that modern women don't have it tough from our particular vantage point, but dependable, neutral aid in dealing with modern men's issues is sorely lacking. When it comes to the history of evolutionary psychology, for instance, there are far more predictors for what attracts women to men as opposed to what attracts men to women. That is, there is more evidence and information available to men about what they are pursuing, but not nearly enough information about why they are pursuing in the first place, the intricacies of their pursuer-like being, and importantly, how they can be the best pursuer in order to meet their particular needs. On the online manosphere, at least, men are readily reduced to their sex drive and nothing else. The focus is literally reducing men to their sex drive and how best to deal with it when it is confronted by a gynocentric world order. The emphasis is always on how to get the woman or woman that you desire, and this is based entirely on a negligent and profitable misuse of data and statistics. This means that the propagated way to get woman is riddled down to its biological core without any consideration for the cultural, the social, and the spiritual, as well as the emotional factors which build up around that core and have since history immemorial. Now, the important thing with evolutionary psychology, which most definitely is not taken seriously or considered thoroughly by the generic manosphere, is that evolutionary psychology merely puts into data and comprehensible information that which is already there. It does not then provide normative explanations for its observations. The manosphere, on the other hand, does just that. Men are sexual beings and therefore ought to mate with multiple women throughout their lives because that is truly what men want to do.
Women have a very strong proclivity to have the best guy that they can get, right? That satisfy that hypergamous need to get the best guy that they can get. Once they feel that that's fulfilled, well, I don't need any of these other motherfuckers because this guy provides me with everything I need. But with the guy, if he could have the baddest chick ever, he's still gonna want to have with other women. So think about this. The female sexual strategy is accomplished. She has the best guy to herself, at least providing security. With the guy though, he's not fulfilling his sexual need, which is I want to have with as many women as possible, right? That's what guys want. Men want variety. I don't care what any girl says. You take the most attractive woman, he's still going to want more girls. You look at a music video, there's a reason why they have girls of different colors, shapes, and sizes. Men want sexual abundance. That is their innate need. So my thing is this: if woman gets the best guy that she can get and her sexual strategy accomplished, why is it that we shun guys from going ahead and wanting to have their sexual strategy accomplished and having multiple women? And of course, if they participate in a safe way, the girl is still taken care of, whatever. I don't see an issue with it.
The most recent research into the differences between men and women in their intimate relationships is important in answering the question why men find intimate relationships so hard. It shows, for instance, that gift giving has a negative effect and is not looked on positively by women looking to pursue a long-term relationship with a male partner. Evolutionary psychologists have established that for modern women, it is the similarity in financial potential, that is the work ethic and maturity which underpin the importance of long-term security and reliability, outgoingness, dependability, and kindness of a male partner, which best predict intimacy success in the long term. Interestingly, the effect for gift giving was negative. The more importance placed on gift giving, the less intimate the relationship was. This might reflect the fact that well-established relationships do not require monetary reinforcement, even though this is important for weak or unstable relationships. Conversely, the more emphasis placed on mutual support as a means of maintaining the relationship, the more intimate that relationship was. Yet, according to the manosphere, women are quite literally aroused by cold hard cash, or women can be tricked by men, specifically rational men, into, and I quote, thinking that real desire is something she wants, not something she has to do. All of this is based around the generic manosphere's fixation, not really with men and their well-being, but with a very generic and deductively reasoned rationale of women and how to get laid by them, whether it be in the context of marriage, monogamous pairings, or, in a far more Nietzschean sense, taking the red pill and realizing man's true game-driven emancipation from the control that femme-centrism and the female imperative has maintained for so long. This is all very well and good, and I can actually understand why the manosphere and its rhetoric is so in vogue. When it comes to women, the wellness industrial complex serves the exact same purpose, and that purpose is onefold. When it comes to overwhelmingly men and the manosphere, and or overwhelmingly women and the wellness industry, both represent major distrust in modern society and what it vainly offers. Wellness distrusts modern medicine and science, and it fosters a sense of agency among its primary customer base, women. The manosphere distrusts everything modern and fosters a sense of agency among its primary customer base, men. Both occupy the void of modernity in the here and now without actually doing anything meaningful in the long term or overall. Both hyperfixate on short-term solutions to very complex and detailed long-term problems. They oftentimes direct blame towards everything and everyone bar the customer themselves, or they inform the customer that via their methods and their ways they can become the better or best version of themselves. And they purport to have overwhelming solutions that can be achieved on the individual level. But as I said earlier, things are indeed extremely tough for men, which the wellness industrial complex in relation to its primary clientele, women, so perfectly shows. Wellness and mindfulness are an example of what can be called emotional capitalism. That is when emotions and emotion-centric products are marketed and sold for profit. This is a booming market, and it is one that is overwhelmingly focused on women for many reasons, but for one very important one. From a young age, girls are encouraged by their parents to express their emotions and their vulnerability. When it comes to same-sex friendships, girls and women overwhelmingly prefer and establish closeness with friends via intimate dyadic activities. That is, activities involving a group of two people and no more, a dyad. When we look at how differently men and women view friendships and their purpose, we can see how, from childhood, women are socialized and better equipped for monogamous, intimate relationships with men, because our friendship styles and societal and familial rearing correspond more fluidly negatively to it. Conversely, male friendships revolve almost exclusively around social activities, competitive activities, and they reflect a preference for group-based activities. Whereas humor matters greatly in female friendships, it hardly matters in male friendships. Within a particular sample pool used by Pierce et al., the psychologists found that only 2% of women had a romantic partner and no best friend, whereas 15% of men with a romantic partner had no best friend. The generic manosphere doesn't readily talk about this because, according to them, men and women have their distinctive natures. We just live in a modern society which rewards one at the other's expense. There is something that modern psychiatry and psychology does talk about, which is termed alexithymia. In psychiatry, alexithymia is a clinical condition which quite literally translates into without words for emotion. It is a condition more common among men than women. Research on children from infancy through the school years shows how this can happen. Mothers, for instance, expose baby girls to a wider range of emotions than baby boys and work harder to control their sons' emotional volatility. Fathers step in to socialize their toddlers along gender lines at around 13 months, verbally roughhousing their sons and talking in more emotional terms with daughters. As kids get older, both parents foster this rift by discouraging sons from expressing vulnerable emotions and encouraging such expression in daughters. And this, according to recent research, puts into words the low-level and normative male alexithymia present in most boys. While boys begin life more emotionally expressive than girls, that tendency wanes as they get older. By age 2, they're less verbally expressive than girls, and by age 4, they're less expressive facially. As I said before, male friendships in childhood and adulthood are centered more so around social activities. On top of this, there is an overwhelming consensus within modern psychology focused on gender and sex differences that as soon as interactions involve more than 2 people, interactions become readily segregated by gender. Peer group interactions cement boys' unhealthy emotional development by promoting structured group activities which foster toughness, teamwork, stoicism, and competition. Boys' culture is notoriously cruel to boys who violate male norms. Essentially, what is being shown is that generationally, but also in numerous ways, contemporarily speaking, men exhibit normative male alexithymia. So what is a viable response that individual men, whether in a relationship or single, can have to the difficulty of intimate relationships? Well, to be perfectly honest, not much can be achieved meaningfully or consistently in the long term without large-scale changes and conversations. Modern society sees no reliable profit in helping modern men to understand masculinity, not just in a rational sense, but especially at an emotional level and in an emotional sense. That is, what masculinity means to a man on the individual level without the overarching input of universal evolutionary psychological inputs and biology. As I said in another video, I never really personally considered how men are actually victims of domestic violence and abuse. And this isn't just because I'm a self-absorbed little prune. Of course, on one level that is the case, but on the other, it's because that isn't something that is spoken about or necessarily encouraged. Emotionality tends to not be conducive with masculinity within our history or in our perspective and idealization of manhood. Competition between men continues into adulthood and is within the manosphere encouraged on many a level. There is no unity of men. There's no friendship beyond that of merely advancing yourself and social networking. Your fellow men are seen more so as threats than as friends or companions. Therapy, of course, is an option, but it is an expensive one, a very middle-class option, steeped in taboo and shame for particularly men. In the UK, for instance, only 5% of men seek mental health services as outpatients, even though they are lonelier than ever before before. 2.5 million British men have no friends whatsoever. Men are also much more likely than women to conceal illness or pain. Men are also 3 times more likely than women to end their own lives. And when we consider ethnicity in all of this, African American men and British men have a considerably harder time than most. Hardly anywhere on the online manosphere do I see emotionality spoken of in a positive light. Stoicism is heralded. Emotions are either feminine or weak. What I also see, which is oftentimes merely an undertone of the manosphere when it comes to deciding to either marry or deciding to have as many women as possible, these men tend to perceive their significant other or others as being able to somehow encompass their everything, being the one. She or these women will fulfill their every need. They will be their lover, their partner, their therapist, their friend, or in most cases, their best friend. Regrettably, this is never true nor beneficial in the long term or for the actual stability and intimacy of a relationship. And this is especially the case as modern women, rightly so, become more self-sufficient, independent, and self-reliant. We have become more expecting of the men in our lives when it comes to the emotional reciprocity and support provided by and to them. The fact that women are waiting longer to settle down and to have children is a sufficient indicator of this. Research shows that establishing friends for men in adulthood tends to lead to the same gender segregated friendships that are void of any real emotional connection. I do think a solution of sorts could be a greater emphasis on couples friendships, itself an interesting point of study worth considering more seriously. Research shows that when it comes to couples friendships, men are seen to open up more and are put into a very rare situation. In couples friendships, men and women are put into social activity with more than 2 people that is, for the first time, not gender segregated. And uniquely, it involves platonic female interaction and friendship with the knowledge and participation of one's female intimate partner. Intimacy and intimate relationships are exceptionally difficult for men. And as I said before, this is in no way to say that from our particular vantage point, relationships are not hard for women as well. But what I have noticed is that when we speak about such things, we are often given labels of pick-me-girl, simp, which completely misses the point of us being able to communicate honestly with each other about our feelings and our emotions, to be empathetic and considerate of the other side, and vice versa. Within the manosphere and in the modern age which we find ourselves in, a greater emphasis has been placed on the materiality at the root and core of modern relationships, which can be summed up as gift giving. What evolutionary psychologists have been able to consistently show is that gift giving on the one hand and mutual support on the other are both the key predictors of the longevity and success or otherwise of an intimate relationship. They both have strikingly different impacts on the relationship. The greater the emphasis placed on gift giving, the lower the intimacy. In contrast, the greater the importance given to mutual support as a mechanism of relationship maintenance, the greater the reported intimacy. Whereas gift giving is observed cross-culturally as a means of creating and maintaining social network ties, it may be that this strategy is only appropriate in the more distal layers of the social network, where tokens of affiliation are required. In the inner layers, intimacy and emotional closeness may be more important. There's also something else that I would like to mention, and this isn't scripted as eloquently, so do bear with me. It may be a bit controversial, but I think it is important to note. The manosphere talks incessantly about the fact that 80% of women are only interested in 20% of men. And they get the statistic from Tinder and Tinder's data and just the ambiance of Tinder and dating apps themselves, in which it is known quite universally that, at least on dating apps, this tends to be the case. And there is an overwhelming and rather unhealthy interest in a small pool of men by the majority of women on these apps. Now, what I find interesting is when you consider two things. Firstly, that on Tinder, as is reflected on most dating apps, the percentage of men who are on these apps is 78.1%. That is, of the 75 million users on Tinder, 78.1% are men. This is something that the manosphere hardly ever pays any tribute or any real consideration to, because it completely flattens the argument that women only care about the 20% of men on Tinder, which actually, when you consider how many women there are on Tinder, which is less than 30%, it makes sense. Secondly, I think what is important about this is that it seems to be in direct conflict with what is, at least evolutionary speaking, and according to a universal consensus among psychologists, that men depend on face-to-face interactions when it comes to intimate relationships, whether that be intimate as in intimate relations with their friends, or more importantly, with women. Men are visual creatures, and being in direct contact with somebody in the sense of being a visual creature, and that isn't to say that men are pervs or anything, but that it's very important for them to be in direct, in-face and in-person contact with individual people in order to actually comprehend their existence, in order to actually formulate an understanding of that individual's personhood. This is not in any way conducive to what we see on dating apps, in which dating apps create this easy way out of men actually being face-to-face with human beings whom, in the majority of cases, are going to reject them outright, or aren't going to want to be their friend, aren't going to want to be their sexual partner. And I think because of this, it has sort of become a self-fulfilling prophecy in and of itself. And I think that pornography plays the same kind of role, in which it is a material product in and of itself, like in essence dating apps are. It's an easy way out of confronting life. It is an easy way out which capitalizes on men, but really, well and truly disadvantages them more than it does women. It is something that I do see when you consider different data sets and different findings, and you sort of put them together in order to try and make a comprehensible story, sort of trying to make a quilt out of things. On the one hand, men need to be in person in order for real, genuine connections to be made. But secondly, they are over-reliant and are encouraged to be over-reliant on social media, on dating apps, on pornographic content, on pornography, and these seeming quick fixes to issues which actually don't fix the issue or don't address the issue in a meaningful and healthy way for them. And I think the manosphere capitalizes off of this because, as I said, it is at the end of the day about making money or about finding meaning for the particular men at the helm of these particular podcasts or these particular websites and forums. It isn't actually about helping the average man to realize himself and to be the best man that he can or may want to be. So that's my little tangent about our modern dating landscape, whose primary customer and consumer is men, yet at the same time, it is the one forum and the one form of interaction that is completely antithetical to the needs and the well-being of men. And I think that is quite tragic. I think we can see just by the fact that women predominantly are not on dating apps, that it is clearly not a healthy, not a productive, and not a well-rounded and good place for any human being to be on. If anything, because it is so algorithmic and so strategic, it really places men in a bind in which they have to, just based on personal experience, they have to be absolute douchebags in order to get anywhere. And it most definitely is not a place that is made in order to benefit men. If anything, it is there to keep them there because they are what is making the most money for these apps. And yes, I don't really know where I was going with that, but I think that that's an important thing to consider with regards to why intimate relationships for men, especially now, are noticeably so hard for them. In an age where short-term gratifications are the norm and ultimately the goal, and where we are sold the myth of easy solutions to big problems, materiality and gift-giving, or at least what is represented by gift-giving, is put front and center for both men and women. Abundance and financial success are all the rage. Sadly, it is this which is at the center of blocking and undermining the development and strengthening of those genuine connections and emotional ties which we all yearn for and ultimately deserve. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this short video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that it has given you some food for thought. I would love to know how you, as either a man or a woman, identify with this idea of intimate relationships being difficult, and what your experience has been with regards to friendships and forming connections. I wish you well out there. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my patrons for your support. And I will see all of you very soon in the next one.